So from Ijoma, we come back to the studio right here where we've had our guest sitting, member of Situation Room and civil society activist is Austin Aigbe. Austin, thank you so much and welcome to Kakaki African Voice.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All right, it's great to have you. Well, I'm sure that you've listened to, at least to some extent, what Ijoma was saying about the visit of the president. So far, so good. A sermon to be preached by Her Excellency at the Lambeth Palace, you know, the business meeting to hold today. But let's first get your takes on what the political significance of the president's visit to the UK at this time, especially when we are looking at the countdown to 2027 election. I asked her that and she gave us a summary, but we want to understand where you look at this from your own perspective.
So for me, I think, first of all, I don't think that, I said on this studio about a few days ago, that the UK will benefit more from the visit and not Nigeria. UK has been historically Nigeria's number one partner, if you use the word partner. Nigeria is a strong member of the Commonwealth, the second largest democracy in the Commonwealth after India. And the only way, I think, politically on this side, is that the ruling party may want to use it as part of political narrative. That we are doing very well. That's why the monarch invited us. And
it's 37 years after.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's the argument. The argument is that you just said, because this is state visit. I mean, that's why it's a bit different. But our president has been to the UK meeting all manner of people in the UK, including the one you just mentioned a few minutes ago. Former President Muhammadu Buhari was in the UK. In fact, he literally lived in the UK. His medical tourism was in the UK. I was hoping that maybe, this is not trying to engage in some form of disinformation. I think from my perspective that part of the visit is to try to pull Mr. President of Nigeria to introduce him to some hospitals in the UK, pull him away from France. This may be, but ordinarily, I don't think that Nigeria, signing all of those, you can sign those without state visit. Really, but just for the significance, for the narrative, I think the ruling party will have the political advantage in terms of narration. But the question will be, after all of this signing, where is the signing from France? Where is the signing from Turkey? I mean, sometimes when we criticize Muhammadu Buhari at that time for all of the frequent travels, that somehow, because they will tell you, you don't know because you're not close to government. I should know because it will impact on me. If those signing doesn't impact on me as a citizen, then I will not regard that kind of signing. Sign mutual agreement that flows down to the peoples of this country. Otherwise, those will just be visit, and by the time you look at the budgetary allocation for that visit, they begin to wonder, what's then the effect of it? But I like it for the political narrative, for the media frenzy. Oh, I mean, all of the people who travel to the UK now, they're going to earn per diem or DSA.
Yeah, we had a guest on the program yesterday who told us that 86 people made the entourage of the president. But let's come back much more into our topic, which is the 2027 general elections and the countdown. I want to look at your overall assessment of, call it preparation, ahead of the 2027 elections.
The 2027 election is going to be a bit very, it may be, I don't want to say worse, but it's looking to be more like that. You'll know that IPAC has signaled non-participation if certain aspect of the electoral law is not re-amended or amended or reviewed. So that's a signal. Even though the president met with them, and the information that came from that meeting suggests that IPAC is holding on to their position, that Section 84 needs to be reviewed, that a law should not determine the internal party regulation, internal party affair, that the Supreme Court has ruled that the internal affairs of the party is entirely the party affairs. So you cannot legislate for the kind of thing the party should do. However, it has an opportunity with it, because I would not want to criticize the electoral act of that Section 84 because of certain nuance. You recall in the 2022 Act, it was Muhammadu Buhari who insisted that the consensus provision must be there before he signs. The Electoral Act proposal of 2022 had just the direct and indirect primaries. Former President Muhammadu Buhari refused to sign, among other things, because that section did not include the consensus candidate, consensus means of selection. So when it was added, it now signed. Now this parliament, if you look at the previous parliament, the 9th parliament, and then look at the 10th parliament, so what happened? Are you going on the advisory of former President Muhammadu Buhari now late? Or you think that this is the best model? In any case, consensus candidates may only have an advantage, huge advantage for the ruling party. Because they've got the instrument of state, the instrument of coercion to insist that if their members don't accept the consensus provision in the selection of candidate, then they run into risk of other things. In the 2023 election, ahead of the 2023 election, after the 2022 Electoral Act, we know that some of the parties, including the ruling party, had an addendum, a form added to the expression of interest form, where you sign your right out to agree to the means of selection of candidate. So that means that when you have signed, you also you would have signed to say, I agree to consensus means. What that means is that if the party goes ahead without including you in the process of that consensus provision, you have no right to go to court. Meanwhile, the law says that every member, every aspirant needed to be in the conversation.
Yeah, as a follow-up to what you've responded, I mean, I think the loudest clause of the amended Electoral Act was the clause 60 that says that real-time election transmission of results, and then if there is no network coverage in the area, you can resort to the Form EC8A for manual collation and all that. It was the loudest, but we have 1,001 more things that we needed to know, and why the conversations around timing and understanding. You mentioned that IPAC, Inter-Party Advisory Council, have threatened not to, observe this ahead of 2027 if adjustment is not made. And I'm looking at their significance of participation, the pros and the cons for the elections at large.
So you said the loudest was Section 63. That was from the civil society perspective.
All right.
The loudest from the political party was Section 84. But even though they also vetoed to the Section 60, the truth of the matter is that everyone had interest in the act. From the civil society perspective, we seem to be speaking on behalf of Nigerian people, arguably, because we think that the trust deficit in the electoral system is because of the way results are collated. And the biggest bane to our result collation process is the collation of results at the ward level. You can win an election at the polling unit and lose that same election at the collation point. So why don't you make that process transparent? Remove any form of provision that impede on that mandatory transmission. And that's why you see it as the ladder, because, so it's to your question. Yes, if parties don't participate, it creates some form of barrier to international cooperation. In Syria alone, after the 2023 election, the major opposition candidate, opposition party, also the APC, pulled out from governance. They refused to go to parliament. They refused to be sworn in at any level. The government was not seen to be credible, in quote, to the point that the African Union, the ECOWAS, the UN, had to intervene to say, no, it's not fair, because you need opposition in political participation. I mean, there are some countries you can argue where opposition are really not visible, but it is not as a result of shrinking. You can say it's countries like Rwanda, let me not go too far. Rwanda, even Cameroon with the old man there was opposition. But in Nigeria, the quest is that because Nigeria democracy has been moving in a particular trajectory from 1999, we've not had any form of military interference like we have in previous First Republic, Second Republic, Third Republic. So this Fourth Republic has been consistent.
All right.
If political parties withdraw from participation, it sends a very weird signal to the international community, and it is not in the best interest of the ruling party.
Okay, so I hear you, and when you mentioned arguably the civil society, representing the power of the people, it brings me to the fact that, the civil society also played a major role, in advancing advocacy for the Electoral Act. There was a lot of drama, a lot of noise. People had a modicum of courage, a litmus of faith that would help the parliament make the right decision. Do you think that there is enough legislative protection, for the sanctity of the 2027 election?
That's where the caveat in the section 63 becomes a problem. Arguably, if you look at section 84, like I mentioned, it's entirely political party. Deal with it. Feed your candidate. However, the things that matter for citizens will be that sanctity of that transmission of result. Because I've seen in cases where we deployed observer in 2019 election, and those observers part of the training was that your observation will be complete when you have observed the polling unit processes, and then you go online and observe the RF process. Wanted to get it out. And in one of the states, I think, okay, it was an off-cycle election of 2019, not to mention the state. Part of the training was when you finish your polling unit, when you have reported that polling unit processes, it happened this poll opened this time, and all of that, we close at this time, go on the RF and report the result of your polling unit. Let us know if what you saw at the polling unit is the same on the RF. In certain cases, there were differences. Differences in terms, maybe not large scale, but there was difference. So the question is, you could actually have pull out the result from polling unit, and then when you get to the word collation, and this is legitimate, and that's why it's a problem for me or for us. If you get to the polling, if you leave the polling unit to the word collation, and there are errors in that result, the returning officer has a right not to accept that result until you correct it. So what that means is this: if Party A scored 20, Party B scored 30, and the number of polling unit, the number of ballot paper issued does not correlate with the number of ballot paper used, and the ones now invalidated, so to amount to the total number of votes, so everything must be complete. So the number of ballot paper issued must again agree to the total number of vote cast and all of the ballot paper used. If that doesn't happen, the returning officer will tell you, go and correct it. In some cases, the presiding officer had to recompute and then go ahead to amend that result sheet from EC8A. The question we asked them was that, how did the returning officer pull down that result on the RF and re-uploaded another? That conversation led to the point where INEC needed to review its own regulation to say, if there are errors in the result sheet uploaded, do not pull it down, re-upload another, so that observers can then see the first and see the second and see where the errors may have happened, so nothing has happened. Like what trended recently in the FCT election, where we saw cancellation of 1,000 something, which was not true. But our mindset went to that number, and because it was the ruling party's number, total vote, right, the euphoria went high, but that number was correct. But the presenters refused to sign that there's a adjusted number to show that there's an action there. That's an error that INEC need to tackle. There are many more. In any case, what I'm saying is that the sanctity of the election is that Nigerians, which are the voters, the one voting, must at this time, when you vote at a polling unit, it is not enough to just go and vote. It is enough to stay until the votes are counted. It's enough to check that you record that result from your polling unit and go on the IRF portal and check whether what you recorded at the polling unit is the same as the one on IRF. So, if it's different, you blow the whistle. Every voter needs to blow the whistle.
So you're saying that the sanctity of the outcome of the election is in the protection of the counting of the votes?
That's it. See, we don't have problem with who emerged as winner. No, we don't. See, if Nigerians voted for you, Adora, with all due respect, you won election. But let the process that pull you up be transparent to the point that we can say, no, this election, see, listen, I've had to call political party candidate. Hello, please. you don't have to go to court. There's no need for it. This process was fair enough because we saw the process. But most of the politicians, again, with all due respect to them, they like to go to court for many other reasons. And lawyers who aid those processes, they also like to go to court. In fact, they push them to go to court for a very strong reason, and which, of course, is important to those lawyers and, of course, to the politicians.
Mr. Aigbe, let's zero in on political parties right now because of it looks like it's so easy because of the absence of ideology, maybe, for politicians to cross over to other political parties. I mean, we had a guest on the program, say Dr. Sam Amadi, sometimes early in March, who spoke to us about why the campaign has been so. And he made reference to a certain governor who says, I don't want to win elections at polling unit and lose the same elections in court. And that spoke to the fear and a lot of integrity in our systems. But what do you think that we have to address for us to move away from this perceived selfishness from our politicians for the overall gains of the people?
While their views may be very correct, I think politicians have 1,000,001 reasons to jump ship. You have also had where people will tell you, oh, I want to belong to the center. So is that about court? I've had where my brothers are there, let me go and join them. Is that court? There are politicians who create conflict in their party for the purpose of leaving that party. We saw that in 2019. Some persons who won on the platform of Labour Party, who became very strong in at the National Assembly, left their party, haven't created conflict at the world level, not national level. So when you talk about politicians, there are many reasons. I mean, with all due respect. Some are also incentivized, you know. So join us, you retain your call. I mean, you had a former national chair of the ruling party now who made your sins will be forgiven if you jump. So there are many reasons. You can't tell me it's because of the court. No. Why is some opposition party candidate at the state affairs today? We know that if not for the Electoral Act, like Adora was asking earlier, the governor of Adamawa, we were all celebrating that we are going to have the first female governor. In fact, I was part of those because it was more, it resonated with what I felt because I wanted to see at
As
least
a he for she.
You can use the word like he for she. I wanted to see that a female will emerge a governor in a typical high-level northern state. I didn't look at the process. I was looking at the end result. Again, that's why at some point everybody has perception that drives us. And we were all running, celebrating the female candidate, but I stopped and said, no, I cannot do this. The REC has no right to announce the result. INEC had to refer to the same IRF results to recompute and then declare the actual winner of that poll. We have had instances where INEC had to suspend the process, including that of Adamawa, suspend the process because the law now provides to INEC that you have an administrative process of 7 days to review a result that is seen to be declared under duress or otherwise. What happened in 2019 when an Imo senator, the returning officer said, I declare this result under duress. That's what led to the review of the 2022 Act. In all due respect, that when we saw the 2022 Electoral Act, we celebrated. We thought that everything was going to be, we have got to the end of it. We then did not know that the same session that gave power to INEC to determine the means of transmission of results also disempowered INEC when the court ruled that, well, there's an IRF, yes, it is good. However, you cannot use the IRF. It's not a means of computation of results.
Right,
but the good news is that
Section
26, this 2026 Act does not mention IRF.
Yeah, so we'd like to announce that Kakaki Social should be here, but we'll take some more minutes, and Chidera will be here with Kakaki Social this morning. Yes, you may continue on your thoughts, and you've highlighted the issues, the possible whys, why politicians job bolt without ideology, without mission, vision. I just want to align with the center. How do we now move away from this problem to flip the script, as I say, for the benefit of the larger society?
You see, the Constitution provides what is called for a recall. That same process is like going from here to heaven. It's almost like never achievable because even the Nigerian government at some point tried it in, I think it was not Zamfara, I think it was a state before Zamfara, Jigawa State, where they tried to recall a member who was not seen to be following Olusegun Obasanjo's pattern. It didn't happen because of the process that is in that recall mechanism. The same thing happened with Dino Melaye. The same thing happened with Natasha. Recall process, even from those who wear the state instrument, is also difficult. So it will be more difficult for citizens. So let's pull away recall. A second one is the attempt to amend the electoral act by the House of Representatives that make politicians, impossible for politicians to join two political parties. That dual membership of political parties shall become an offense with 10, is it 5 years in?
No, 2 years in prison.
2 years imprisonment,
10 million naira fine.
Fine. So that would have been an advantage. But the House of Rep missed it. Because they benefit from the booty of defection, they will not address the main thing. I have argued before that there is no political party system in Nigeria. We have political association. So until we have party structure that makes parties truly supreme, in today's world, parties are not supreme. Nigerian political parties are not supreme, particularly parties in power. They are not supreme. The president, who is elected on the platform of the party, becomes a leader of that same party. A governor, maybe he came from the UK or something, arrived in Nigeria with so much resources, they gave him the ticket, and suddenly he becomes the leader of the party. Let's not go too far. These governors that just defected to the party they once fought against have become the leaders of those parties. How can party be strong? Party can never be strong where those who are elected on the platform of the party are also not the ones who lead that party, who determine the state affair. Is a challenge. However, to deal with it, let's put a caveat. You decamp, you lose your seat. There will be no more crisis in parties. All this argument about there's no crisis in ABGA, so why are you decamping? So there's crisis in Labour, where there's crisis in PDP, so it's okay to decamp. Politicians are creating problems in the party to decamp. I am telling you, the day they know, because they are also they want to pass it. You see where they are? They will never attempt it. I want to give a challenge to the National Assembly. Pass as part of your review of dual membership that any elected official, whether governor, president, parliamentarians, who decamp from one party A to B, will lose that seat. Parties, intra-party affair will cease. Intra-party conflict will cease. The party mechanism for resolving conflict will become very strong. People will take their case appropriately to party structure. They will not even go to court because they know that if the party sacks them, they may lose their seat. So make parties strong.
All right, Mr. Igbo, interesting points you've raised. But then I look at the non-negotiable standard of democracy across Africa, especially in emerging countries. We look at the voice of opposition and the idealism behind it. Parties like ANC in South Africa, right-centered party in Kenya. We look at parties in Ghana and the party that brought in Joseph Boakai in Liberia. You were an observer in some of these elections. You saw the people power. Coming back to Nigeria, looking at the opposition that we have, the idealism and the ideology, do you think that they will give Nigerians what Nigerians really want? Or is it again precipiced on political correction and interests?
So politics, there's no permanent enemy in politics. We all know that once your interest aligns, forget all that has happened. Otherwise, how do you ever think that a Peter Obi will be sitting with an El-Rufai in the same room and having conversation? How do you even think that a Lorenta Onoche will be in a meeting where... Don't look this... It's funny.
Okay, we have to
The expressions elude you.
We have to go. But let me read a comment from Martin OTC. He says, Rena and Adora, please tell Mr. Austin that most Nigerians would vote come 2027 because of what happened in 2023. Lack of trust right there.
That is a trust deficit I mentioned earlier. However, this is the time to vote and protect that vote. What Nigerians did in 2023, we thought that the electronic device and electronic transmission was not enough to solve it. No. In 2027, we will not only rely on technology, we will also monitor the human who use the technology. So, what will you do, my brother, or my sister, every one of us, vote, protect that vote, ensure you have it. If possible, tweet it, Instagram it, Facebook it, do all of the things you have to do with that your result. Don't worry. There's a way artificial intelligence, we have to aggregate it so that we have an alternative process of collation of results beyond the PVC done by a member of the civil society.
All right, remember that if you don't have a voter's card, registrations are ongoing so that you can also be qualified and eligible to vote. But that's where we take it today. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Austin, thank you so much. And I'm sure that the light and the waiting of Kakaki Social has been ongoing, and it is now time to bring it to you expressively.